Hello everyone, how you doing? Pastor Zac and Kristin Sgro here to bring you our final discussion on the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality course. It's one that we've been going through as house churches over the past couple months, maybe 10, 11 weeks. But before we do that and get into this final discussion, I have just two quick announcements for you. First, if you are at all looking to get connected to Neighborhood Church or even join a house church, please fill out our online Connect card. It's linked in the body of the Facebook message that you're watching this on, or if you're on YouTube and watching this via our YouTube channel, you can go to our website, ourneighborhood.org, and the online Connect card is located there. And secondly, we are asking that if you're continuing to tithe, or if you haven't yet started to tithe for Neighborhood Church, we would ask that you do so that our work of continuing to equip and resource all of the different house churches can continue. And so if you haven't started tithing yet, we would love that you would start to tithe. And if you are tithing, we thank you for your continued generosity and support as we are able to continue the work of the ministry during this pandemic. And so with that, we are going to get started with our final episode. As you guys know, this is my beautiful wife, Kristin Sgro. Even I have difficulty with that last name. Kristin Sgro, who is also a co-lead pastor with myself for Neighborhood Church. And if you've been following at all with us over the last couple of weeks, you've known that we've gone through Pete Scazzero's Emotionally Healthy Spirituality to help us as a church become more and more healthy, emotionally healthy and spiritually mature. And today brings us to chapter 8 of the curriculum, in which Pete talks about a rule of life, which is a way to orient our entire life around God. And it's this rule of life that kind of encapsulates everything that we've been learning throughout the first 7 chapters of this material. And so I want to give you a quick definition, and then me and Chris are going to share with you a few of the strengths that we have in this area of a rule of life, and then a few weaknesses that we have to hopefully help better position you all to start to implement this in your own life. But first, Scazzero defines a rule of life as, and I'm going to quote him, an intentional conscious plan to keep God at the center of everything we do. It provides guidelines to help us continually remember God as the source of our lives. It includes our unique combination of spiritual practices that provide structure and direction for us to intentionally pay attention and remember God in everything we do. And so in chapter 8 of the EHS book, he highlights 12 categories or 12 elements of this rule of life. And I'll quickly go through all of them. And if one of them jumps out at interest to any of you, maybe mark it down, and then me and Kristin will expound on a few of those areas. First is scripture, which is there is a time for reading and praying through the Bible in your life. There is silence and solitude, an area that is a strength for me that I will talk to you about in a few minutes, but it helps us to yield control of our lives to God and helps us learn to be quiet. There is the daily office, which helps to provide structure and organic times of devotion, as well as a variety of different types of devotions. There's studying, this idea that you dig into Scripture. Many of you would know that as a Bible study time. There's Sabbath. It's this rest and relaxation and this break from the daily grind, either on a weekly basis or a much smaller Sabbath on a daily basis. There's simplicity. This idea of living a simple life that helps to detach us from the things of this world and attach us to God. There's play and recreation, one of my weaknesses, and it's just that. It's simply learning to play and learning to recreate, learning to enjoy the gifts that God has given us through creation, all the different varieties of things that are out there for us to partake in and do and have fun. There's service and mission, is where do we see God moving and how do we join him in doing what he's doing. There's care for the physical body, obviously looking at this physical specimen that you see right here. It involves exercise and what you eat and how you take care of yourself physically, because quite honestly, we can't forget about the physical because we are physical beings as well as spiritual and emotional beings. Then there is emotional health, everything that we've been talking about thus far. There's this idea of family, whether it's a marriage, whether it's parenting, whether it's your extended family and your health and engagement in that area. And then finally, he has this element he calls community, or companions for the journey. And it's who are you living life with along this journey that we call life. And so with that, as we begin to share our strengths and weaknesses in each of these categories, I'm going to ask Kristin, which one of these 12 areas of the rule of life is a strength for you, is easy for you to implement on a daily or weekly basis?
Okay, so as I gave this thought, it would definitely be the rule of life, family.
Okay.
So I naturally am drawn, if you know me at all, I'm naturally drawn to research, study, anything that comes hard into my life, you can find me researching and trying to figure a path forward.
No doubt.
And parenting for us is not easy. I don't think it's easy really for anybody.
No.
But
parenting is a breeze.
A little fun there. But so definitely the family one, and I'm so drawn, even since our first child was born, I've always been drawn at understanding. Back then it was a moment to moment, like she's doing this. What do the experts say about this? And okay, to expound on it a little bit.
No,
okay,
keep going. So, tell me the importance of how it's related to the rule of life.
So I'll tell you, what this fleshes out in my life. So God has led me, how I implement this rule of life. God has led me over the years to various books. Mm-hmm. You look at your bookshelf, we've got 900 parenting books. Some good, some bad, some, a little both. So he leads me to read these books and kind of help develop a picture in my mind over the years of what godly parenting looks like, maybe what it doesn't look like. Yeah. And then Pete talks about in the chapter, especially even under family, what he learned he had to develop even in himself to be able to even parent and develop his kids. And so I realized probably over the past year, I've read all these books, I have tons of ideas to pull from, but I was parenting in the moment. I was parenting just to keep my head above water. I think you would, relate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Many viewers would relate. Parenting in the moment, not having any plan forward. The only plan forward was to survive the day, especially when they were younger and not in school full time. Now it looked like they come home from school and let's just survive that transition time. And so really what had to happen in me was to get this desire for a plan forward. The Old Testament says something about where there is no vision, the people will perish. Yes, and so I was perishing inside. You were perishing inside, most definitely. And so, he gave me this desire inside to get this clearer plan forward, and how I wanted to shape and mold them. And so that took study, and ultimately that took learning more on how to execute it, right? A plan's great, but if you don't know how to execute it, it's great if I want to develop patience in my kid. Well, just wanting to develop patience isn't going to develop patience in my child. So I had to, I don't even want to say the word had. It's almost like God just brought it to me, a specific book on how kids grow in the stages of life they're going through and what you can expect at this
What's the name of that book?
Just Boundaries by Henry Cloud and Townsend. And so it was the Boundaries book, and it really helped shape this vision in my head of where my kids are at developmentally and how, good character qualities that you want to instill, but specifically the book goes over on how to implement these character qualities. And he uses the boundaries. He uses boundaries, hence the title of the book.
Well, so obviously we're doing this in our family, and you've done a fabulous job at that. But what I don't think we truly realize as the church is that we are part of a bigger spiritual family. And so not necessarily something I asked you to prepare for, but talk to me how the implementing of boundaries and limits within our own family and within and specifically our kids has helped you to interact with the greater church family that we are a part of and that you are co-lead pastor of, and how those boundaries and limits have, and maybe that's an unfair question to ask you, but I'm sure you'll be able to share something, and how that has helped you grow in a greater relationship with God and a greater relationship with other, really loving God vertically and loving others horizontally.
Love the question. So you didn't ask me to prepare for it, but
no, I didn't. You see, I got her off guard.
I got my answer. I can't follow it here.
All right, that's good.
So one way, anybody that's friends with me, you've already heard this whole thing from me because I naturally talk about it, because parenting has come so very hard for me. And so you naturally, if you are in somewhat of a network with me, I am talking about this. So you're hearing it whether you want to hear it or not, part of my good quality and bad quality, but it's helped me with anybody that's come to me from the church, looking maybe just in conversation as we're relating, and it helps me, suggest things that I have learned, that I have implemented, that I can also say, my child did XYZ, and I enforced this boundary, and here's how I did it, and here's the fruit I'm seeing from it. And helping other people grab somewhat of a vision for themselves on moving forward with their own parenting. They don't have to do it the same way, but an encouragement, like,
Absolutely.
get a vision for what you want. It will help you. And then, so it helps horizontally. I'm always talking about it. And then vertically, and that was actually one of my next points of what I needed to develop inside of me.
Were you going to get to it on this video, or were we going to have to do part? Were we going to have to do part 2?
I was going to get to it on this video. The struggle in implementing any of these plans with parenting is I have to know how the Father parents me. And I have lived my whole life moment to moment, struggling through each moment, feeling anxious over each moment, right? Realizing the Father too has a plan for me, not in a cheesy way of how some people can say that, but he has a plan on how to shape and mold me. He's using every single thing in my life daily to shape and mold me. And my job is to respond to that, right? And so understanding the rest of my life is going to be him parenting, shaping, molding me, looking more like Jesus over the years. And so knowing that means I have this big job that I need the Holy Spirit to help me with, to accept my kids where they're at. Accepting doesn't mean not calling them out of it and developing boundaries for them and learning character stuff that I want to develop in them, but ultimately accepting where they're at, loving them where they're at, and then calling them forward out of that.
That's good.
Because that's what he's doing to me.
Absolutely.
And
so I'm gonna jump in just to speed things up, because I know you could talk about this for hours, but even as you're listening to this and you're 12 areas of the rule of life. Well, how do I go about implementing them into my own life? And even listening to Kristin talk about that, she has been passionate about that and have been implementing that in her life and our family for years. We talk about disciplining our children, and we started out with iPhone version 1 years and years ago when our first child was born, and we're on like iPhone version 11 now. And so it takes time. And so for any of you out there that might even be getting overwhelmed or even overwhelmed as you heard those 12, pick 1 or 2 and start to put it into practice. And so you think that helps?
I think,
understand that?
Elaborating on what the iPhone 1 was like the first parenting book I ever read that was, shepherding their heart.
Yep.
And then iPhone 11 is now the boundaries book, right? And God is taking everything and making it better. So don't expect perfection. Like this is nothing about being perfect. It's getting a vision.
Sure. So for me, one of the strengths for me is silence and solitude. I often tell Kristin I could have been a monk.
Should have been.
I love just being, I should have been. I love just being by myself. Most of the time I enjoy it, maybe with a nice bourbon and a cigar, or watching something on TV or on Netflix. But I also have been able to take that and mold that into a time of silence and solitude with the Lord, and being able to quiet myself down and really learn to hear from Him in a way that I would say probably I never knew before maybe 2015-ish, somewhere around there. So again, we're in 2020 now, and it's been a journey for me. And I know that silence and solitude in a person's life, with work, the stress from work, with parenting, if you're single, dating others, then if you were to come home from your job, what the mess and chaos of that could look like, and all the 9 million things that are coming at us daily. How on earth can you find time to silence yourself, to quiet down enough to where you can learn to just be with God and hear from Him in a special way? And that's a hard thing to do, and it's taken me lots and lots of time to do it. But I want to give you guys out there watching some practical helps that you can get started in doing this. And something that I've been able to do just recently, is it's been harder for me now just in this last season to quiet myself, is I've been doing this technique, and I'll kind of give you an idea of it. Is one, I was in a really comfy, easy chair, it's a recliner, and I was doing my quiet time in that recliner. You know that recliner very well.
Love it.
It's in my hodgepodge of an office, and I just, over time, I'm just not able to quiet myself and to push out the distractions of the daily life. And so what I did, and I remember maybe reading about it in a book called Present Perfect by Greg Boyd, maybe even hearing it from Sgro, although I don't know that he talked about this thing in general specifically, but this idea of posture. And I put myself in more of an upright chair, my feet on the floor, my arms on the side, and then something I learned in the book Present Perfect by Boyd is this idea of deep and heavy breathing, almost like a meditative breathing. But what I would do is, you take deep breaths and you inhale life, and you even say those things over and over again in your mind. And then when you exhale death. And that began to help me center myself and silence myself, and to bring me to this area of solitude. And even hands down, and this is a Greg Boydism, but in Present Perfect, a hands down of putting down the things and the worries and the sins of this world. And then when you open your hands up, you're opening yourselves up to the blessings of God. And if you can begin to do this, and you might fail 1,000 times, but on that 1,001st time that you're able to silence yourself and experience the manifest presence of God, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty unbelievable. I don't know what vision I should share just as a time of experiencing the presence of God, but just recently, this past week, as we are all in right now, a season with the pandemic, a season of in-between, of struggle and suffering, I got this vision of myself quite literally on fire. I shared this with you. I'm burning, and it seems pretty graphic, and I can tell that I'm burning in this vision. And then almost, within a second, 1 or 2 seconds, within that fire of me burning, I see almost like this Iron Man figure, but he's completely like a golden Iron Man. And I know it's me, and I'm just like, what's going on here? And what God shared with me during that time is that I'm in the fire of almost like the dross that is skimmed off when the gold is being burned. I'm being purified by fire. And it was a vision that God gave me that during this specific time in life with the pandemic, trying to lead a church, trying to lead a family, in this world where there's no certainty in the future, what God said to me in that moment is that He is refining me, and He is making me into where I can experience my inner and truer self, and then begin to lead out of that moment. And you say, well, that's great. What does that mean? I mean, what does that mean for my life?
Right.
And you know this, but when you can hear from the Father directly, and experience the presence of Jesus in your life, that can push you on, and there is a sense that you will have about your own personhood and how the relationship between you and God is solidified, and how you can then experience what I would simply call freedom and liberation from the things of this world that weigh you down. And by the way, you need more and more of those, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
that was one of my strengths that I'm able to do. And by no means do I get those every single day, but you will experience those as you begin to try and start to experience at least this component of a rule of life. And so you've heard that's one of my strengths. You've heard Kristin's with family. Maybe share briefly with our viewers, what is an area of weakness that you'd like to try and work on as far as implementing a rule of life?
My weakness is his strength. So the Sabbathing. So this.
Mine was silence and solitude. Sabbath is more resting and relaxation.
That's right.
So it's nice to correct your wife in an
great?
interview that I get to hear about probably when the camera goes off.
Wonderful. So
I love you, too.
I love you too. So the Sabbathing, taking this initial, if we move a couple chapters back, he gives some boundaries around Sabbathing, stopping, resting, centering yourself. I don't know the other ones that he speaks on, I forget. But the stopping is really hard. And again, I'm just scratching the surface of doing this. I've just actually started practicing. I would call them more mini Sabbaths. Like Monday, I just took, I think it was probably a full hour of just doing nothing. I can begin to work very easily when I journal out to him.
Sure.
And so journaling is very healthy for me, but it also can become a work for me. And so Sabbathing looked like for me just doing nothing in his presence. And so I've had just teeny tiny bits of fruit that have made me want to keep doing that.
Sure.
Teeny tiny. But, I'll give you an example of one.
Like little breadcrumbs along the way.
Little breadcrumbs that it's like, Kristin, keep doing this.
Yeah.
Keep going this way. Realizing that I'm in his presence all day anyways, right? And this is an intentional time of actually really focusing in on his presence. Has been very, key in helping me sit there for a little bit of time. But also, I came to him very anxious the other day about many things, very similar to Mary Martha scenario, and kind of brought into tears of just this release of what was going on inside of me. Nothing even going on in my mind, just a release of just emotions. And I just felt very safe in his presence, and I felt like I discerned around that he was showing me that I don't always need to come to him with all of my problems.
Sure.
He wants me to, but he actually just enjoys being with me.
And so you, in those moments, it was kind of, you were experiencing a time of rest and relaxation.
Correct.
During your daily grind.
Correct.
And so I think, what she illustrated is this idea of incorporating mini Sabbaths and combining it with silence and solitude and how the two play off of each other. And I want to stress to you, you who are watching, this is not about being perfect and doing it perfectly. It's about forming a new direction and trajectory in your life to begin to include these things. And I know for me, two areas of weakness that I have are simplicity and play and recreation. I mean, looking at my closet, I'm keeping around suits that I used to wear when I was, when I wore suits in my job life, telling Kristin, like, I know there's going to be a time when I need them. I really love these suits. And they'll be out of style. They're probably already out of style. But this idea of reducing clutter in your life, that's kind of a metaphor to reduce complex things that you have in your life that are maybe unhealthy attachments to. Like I have an attachment to those suits and certain other articles of clothing that I'm not willing to give up, and it leads to a life of complexity when this whole aspect of being simple and leading a simple life is something that Jesus desires for all of us. I once never had this validated. My old pastor shared this with me, that Nick Saban, famous college football coach, he would eat the same thing every single day for lunch because he makes thousands upon thousands of decisions every single day. And just the stress of eating lunch and deciding, ordering off a menu adds to that. And so he said, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to eat the same lunch every single day so that I don't have to make that decision amidst all the other decisions that I'm making. As a way of being simple, of simplifying. And so I need to do that, as long as well as play and recreation, because man, I enjoy my life and I do fun things, but I'm realizing the things that I do for fun, the fantasy football, watching my kids compete in sports, me competing in golf and things, although I'm getting better at it, is those evoke negative emotions in me because I'm so competitive. And so I need to really learn how to play and recreate and enjoy what God has given us in this beautiful creation that He has created. Right. So you were
I was just, the thing that I was thinking of on adding is something like, we purchased a turtle for our middle child.
This
maybe
turtle.
2 years ago?
1 year ago this Christmas.
We didn't put in the thought of like, well, what's it going to take to manage it?
Sure.
Is she able to manage it? Where's it going to go? What does it actually really need when it's, in certain places in our house?
Side note, that was a last second Christmas gift.
It was.
Plan. Remember we were talking about plan?
Yeah.
Plan.
It was a last second. And if anyone's interested in a turtle, we may be getting rid of it. But again, it seems so simple and goofy, but that thing takes time to manage. And I only have, and you only have so much amount of time where you actually have time to do that could be going to so many better things. And honestly, like, she was not at the age to take care of it. And so we didn't think that through. Sure. And now we're kind of reaping the benefit, or not the benefits, the cost of that.
The cost.
But something I wanted to add is the word that was popping up in my mind while you were talking was desire. Look through this list and see what you actually already desire. I think that could be a clue into start there. Like the family one, I've always desired that. Doesn't mean when I first set out, I didn't really probably even have God in my mind when I first set out. It was to get it done, to plan, to figure things out. But go with what you're desiring naturally. What are you more prone to go for? And, as far as the weakness goes, pray about before you pick one.
That's great
that
advice.
You just randomly do.
Well, as we come to a close, the question that I'm always after is, what's the purpose? What's the end game in this? Right. Because if you listen to everything that we talked about today, you can become very legalistic in the implementation and the following of a rule in life, and that's not the purpose. I'm going to share with you another quote from Sgro that he shares in chapter 8, and it's about the goal, and he says this: our goal is the same, union with God in Christ, transformation into His image, and the freeing of our hearts from anything that stands in the way of Christ living in and through us. And so it's the rule of life and the elements that make up the rule of life that will help shape us into Jesus and guide us towards becoming more and more like Him every single day of our lives. And so as we close, think of it like this. For those of you that lack a desire, a rule of life can help with a behavior modification that I heard from a guy at a school in downtown Canton. Behave, not in regards to rule of life, but he said this saying, and I can't get it out of my mind because I think it's good. It's behavior modification that leads to transformation, and it can help you maybe start to do those things of which you can experience the presence of Jesus in, and begin to have your desires changed. And then for those of you that have those desires already, it can help order your days and order your life and structure your life in a way that you can begin to practice the presence of God. And so in short, it's very simple, that a rule of life is there to help us love God with all of who we are and to love our neighbors as ourselves, the two great commandments that Jesus puts on an equal playing field. And so as always, I want to thank my beautiful wife, Kristin, and thank you guys for tuning in, and may you all go in the grace and peace and mercy of Jesus Christ for the rest of your weeks. We'll see you later.